to another fantastic video. Today we're going to be looking at the sources of executive power. But before we do, let's review executive power under the Articles of Confederation. So if you remember, the Articles of Confederation was the first document that we used in the United States to establish a government. This is what we used. It was the first attempt at self-government. And it didn't really work because what was created by the Articles wasn't strong enough to meet the needs of our nation. So, under the Articles of Confederation, the executive branch as we know it today did not exist. And the legislative branch was the branch that had the most authority. So, as time went on, our founding fathers realized that that was not really going to work best for our nation. So, we decided to change, hence the Constitution. So, then thinking about the Constitution and the source of executive power, Article 2 of the Constitution establishes the executive branch. It says we're going to have a president, we're going to have a vice president, they're going to be elected using the electoral college system. And there's also this one really important clause in Article 2, and we've talked about it before. It's called the Wild Card Clause. And the Wild Card Clause says that the executive power of the United States shall be vested or given to the president. It doesn't tell us what executive power is, and it doesn't tell us what executive power isn't. Therefore, it can kind of be used in a whole bunch of different ways. Presidents throughout history have used the wild card clause for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about those in class. Another source of executive power is the immediate needs of the nation. And basically, the United States looks to the president, looks to the executive branch whenever we're in some sort of crisis. And they're like, hey, do something. So some examples of how the president responds to the immediate needs of the nation could be how they respond to a pandemic. Think about the COVID response. That all came from, or a lot of that came from the executive branch. Think about if we are ever in war, if we're ever attacked. If we ever have to go overseas and fight, that kind of stuff would be the president responding to the immediate needs of the nation. If we're ever in some sort of an economic crisis, maybe the president authorizes the use of a stimulus check or asks Congress to, hey, do something with student loans or something like that. Those are all examples of how the president might address the immediate needs of the nation. We also have the mandate of the people. And this word mandate kind of sounds like mandatory. And if something is mandatory, you have to do it, right? So the president sometimes responds to the mandate of the people. If the president has been elected by an overwhelming majority, and maybe one of the things that the president says they're going to do during their time in office is to solve global warming. Well, if that's their main issue and they're elected on this overwhelming majority, then that's what people are going to expect the president to do. They're going to expect him to capitalize on that campaign promise. And while the president has a lot of power, there are also, of course, limits on those powers. And we've talked about those before. There are three specific areas that we're going to talk about. So Congress can limit the president's power by overriding a veto. Congress can limit the president's power by refusing to approve a nomination to the Supreme Court. They can impeach and remove the president. Those are some ways that Congress can limit the power of the president. Of course, we also have the president can be limited by the courts. The Supreme Court or other federal courts could look at an executive order that the president signs and say, well, that's not really constitutional. You can't do that, and therefore can limit that person. We also have the limit that is placed on the president by public opinion. If the president is doing something, there's a specific policy they're using or enacting, and the people don't like it, maybe they contact their congressman, maybe they contact their senator, maybe they speak out about it, and they say, hey, we really don't like that you're doing this. Maybe you need to stop. Okay, so whether or not the president listens is entirely up to them. So that is where I'm going to stop for today. If you guys have any questions, let me know.